nominees. A candidate needs approval from at least half of the deputies to get the job. Balloting will be declared invalid if the ballots collected outnumber the ballots issued. NPC deputies can only choose from the list of the candidates. And after the NPC endorsement, the president will issue decrees to the public to finalize the endorsement. Each person can serve a 5-year term. And endorsements will begin soon for the government's ministerial level officials. Here's how they assume office. First comes the premier's nomination of candidates. Lawmakers will then deliberate the nominations. A majority of the chamber will have to sign off on a candidate for an endorsement to move forward. Lawmakers are not allowed to vote for candidates who are not on the ballot. And after the candidates approved by the NPC, presidential decrees will be issued to wrap up the endorsement. Each official gets a 5-year term. Now, China has adopted an institutional restructuring plan for the State Council. It will now consist of 26 ministries and commissions, in addition to the General Office of the State Council. The number of ministerial level institutions will be reduced by 8, the vice ministerial level institutions by 7. Here are more details.
7 ministries are newly created. These are the Ministry of Natural Resources, Ministry of Ecological Environment, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, Ministry of Culture and Tourism, National Health Commission, Ministry of Veterans Affairs, Ministry of Emergency Management. 2 ministries have been restructured. They are the Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Justice. The functions of 2 institutions have been optimized, the Ministry of Water Resources and the National Audit Office. There is also a new National Supervisory Commission. The Ministry of Supervision and the National Bureau of Corruption Prevention are merged into the new commission. It is the 8th such reform since 1982, occurring at a frequency of about every 5 years.
Again, I want to take you back to the Great Hall of the People because as we speak, the National People's Congress, which is the country's national legislature, is having their plenary session in the Great Hall of the People, and close to 3,000 NPC deputies are present. As you can see, they are casting their ballots and trying to vote on Premier's nomination on key positions in the State Council. And we're just standing by for the final results and announcement. And as we speak, as we're standing by for that, let's also get some analysis onto that. Let's bring in our Victor Gao, the Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization, and also current affairs commentator Einar Tengen. Great to see you all. So let's talk about this. This is a big day. In just a short while, we're going to hear the Premier's nomination of the final positions, including 4 vice premiers, 5 state councilors, and also 26 ministerial level leaders. And it's reported that we're going to likely to see a reshuffle. And before we get to the possible new faces, how would you summarize past state council's legacy and what are your expectations for the next one? Victor, let me start with you.
I think over the past 5 years, the state council under the leadership of Premier Li Keqiang really did a wonderful job and helped steer the Chinese economic situation through very, very challenging situation, both at home as well as abroad. And I think the overwhelming support not only among the government officials but also among the people at large is very evident, and the track record maintaining a very robust and dynamic growth rate for each of the past 5 years is for the whole world to see. And the Chinese economy has managed to pass through a very turbulent international situation and emerged as really a very, very strong winner compared with many other countries. So I think congratulations to Premier Li Keqiang for the 5 past years, wonderful job, and also for his ministers, councillors and commissioners, head of the bureau and agencies. It's really a very solid performance over the past 5 years.
Heiner, what kind of a China have the State Council inherited?
Well, I think Xi Jinping put it, government is a road that never ends, and it's continuing. And this is what it has. Right now, I think they're less concerned about collecting accolades for what happened in the past than they are about addressing the issues that are going forward. And they're there. I mean, they were outlined by the party. It's very clear. But just in terms of background, I think people need to understand a little bit, because people watching from outside won't understand a lot of this stuff in terms of the role of the NPC versus the party. The party stuff is separate. This is really the government. right? And what they're talking about here is equivalent to a cabinet. These are the people who actually do the administration. Party sets goals, all right? They're very active in terms of that, and they supervise. But this is really the people who, like Trump's cabinet. These are the people who have departments. These are the people who are responsible day to day to making sure that these policies work.
Stay with me, Einar and Victor. I want to also take a look at this. Under the newly passed Governmental Institution Reform Plan and the ongoing first sessions of the 13th National People's Congress, China will replace its Ministry of Agriculture with the new Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. Our reporter Wang Hui spoke to some NPC deputies from rural areas to get their views on the restructuring.
With the fresh reform of governmental institutions, the new Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs will inherit the responsibilities of the current Ministry of Agriculture and absorb some programs from 4 other ministries. They include programs in agricultural investment, comprehensive agricultural development, farmland regulation, and irrigation and water conservancy. The reform will also see the Ministry of Transport take on the current Ministry of Agriculture's duties of fishing vessel inspection, supervision, and management.
没有产业，没有经济，你就不可以持续。
An NPC deputy believes this integration will make the government's work more efficient.
这是通过各部门的一个整合，把这个
The reform will consolidate the resources from different ministries, so the duties of taking care of this field are concentrated. In order to deal with one issue, in the past, we may have had to go to multiple ministries. But now, we only need to go to one ministry and finish everything all at once.
The reform of the current Ministry of Agriculture aims to better fit the requirements of today. During the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, which was held in October last year, Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged a rural revitalization strategy. He reiterated that issues related to agriculture, rural areas, and the people there are fundamental to the nation because they directly concern the country's stability and the people's well-being. To address these issues, the party must prioritize the development of agriculture and the rural areas. NPC Deputy Dr. Zhou Songbo, who has been a doctor in rural areas for more than 30 years, believes the creation of the new ministry responds to the shift in China's policy.
以前我们的农业部主要是抓粮食生产。
The Ministry of Agriculture used to focus on grain production, but the problem of grain supply has basically been resolved. The key focus of work now is the rural revitalization strategy. It emphasizes developing economic industries in rural areas. As the emphasis of the work has been shifted, the new ministry is no longer only about agriculture, but has rural affairs to its name.
Wang Hui, CGTN, Beijing.
So, Einar, Victor, we're seeing some major institutional reforms taken by the government. A number of ministries are being merged together. Some are being replaced. New ones are being added. What stand out to you the most?
I think several things. One is the establishment of the National Immigration Bureau. This is a very, very important thing, and this is a breakthrough. Previously, the function is embedded as a department in the Ministry of Public Security, which is fine for all these years. However, if you compare China's situation with the rest of the world, in most countries there is a Ministry of Immigration. And the immigration is not directly part of the police department, mainly because people coming for immigration matters will be surprised that I need to go to a police station to start with. And I think establishing this Ministry of Immigration Affairs will make it more easy for people either in China who want to go out of China or for foreigners who want to come into China to handle immigration-related matters. And this is also very much up to international standards. And I think the other thing is the establishment of the Emergency Management Ministry, because the functions were scattered around in several ministries before. By pooling all these functions together in a newly created ministry will help China to fight against disasters of all kinds, natural or man-made. And this is very good for people.
What do you think, Einar? The immigration ministry, does that mean the country is opening up its population policy.
Well, I think it's things, but I think you have to look in a much broader way at this whole reorganization. I mean, China before, literally what they were saying earlier about having to go to multiple ministries to get something done. I mean, people have to understand the policies come down, and then at the local level, they're supposed to implement them. But to implement them, they have to get the permission for their plans. And before, it was multiple ministries for different areas. This was a kind of a check and balance within the system that they had to make sure that no one was making all of the decisions. But now they realize that they have to streamline it. They have to be more efficient. They have to rely on good people rather than pretending that the process itself can govern itself, because it was really holding up everything that was necessary to get done. Time and energy spent lobbying these different groups and then trying to coordinate their answers to this, very, very difficult, especially at the local level.
Yeah, we're continuing to see the downsides of the government since 1982, but never before have we seen institutional reforms this far-reaching. As of now, 75 ministerial and vice ministerial entities have been reduced. What kind of impacts, for our viewers who are watching us, what kind of impact would this massive reform have on them?
No, I think, first of all, it makes the Chinese government leaner and more efficient. And also, the Chinese government, through this round of institutional reform, becomes more efficient in delivering the services. Let me give you a very small example. Formerly, we had the Ministry of Agriculture. Now it is being renamed as Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, mainly because purely focusing on agriculture may be necessary but not be sufficient to solve all the problems in the countryside. Mainly because agriculture is agriculture, but we also talk about the farmers, for example, and the countryside as a whole to build up capacities in the countryside. So the new ministry, Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, will not only take care of agriculture itself, which is still very important, but also take care of rural affairs, including farmers, their families, all their needs, for example, as well as countryside development.
Yeah, and rural revitalization strategy is sort of the centerpiece of the government work on rural side. It makes nice applause line, but we know reality could be far challenging. How would the new ministry serve up to the strategy, this grand vision?
Well, the whole point is accountability. Right now, most of the poor, the war and poverty, these 30 million people are in the rural areas, and it needs a comprehensive solution. You can't just say, oh, go to this ministry for your agriculture. Oh, you want to start an agricultural business? Oh, you go to this other ministry. This is beyond the ability of, uneducated in some cases or unsophisticated farmers who are just trying to get along. You want to take them out of poverty. So I think a lot of it is about accountability. How can the government look down the line and say, look, are you getting this done?
Yeah. All right. Now, China's national legislature on Saturday approved a massive institutional restructuring plan that aims to improve government efficiency, making it more service-oriented. And this included the merger of the China Banking Regulatory Commission and China Insurance Regulatory Commission. Our reporter Liu Yan has more details.
China's new Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission is designed to address overlapping duties and the loopholes in regulatory function. The Commission aims to ensure legitimate and stable development as well as prevent systemic financial risks. It's beneficial to the macro control of national fiscal policy. It's also conducive to the formulation of unified policy and the measures to guard against the financial risks. We have more secure protection, investment, and financial management. Experts say the reform comes at a crucial time. It's also expected to better protect the legal rights of financial consumers and further clarify responsibilities between different supervisors. China's financial system has grown rapidly in both size and complexity. It's become the world's largest with financial assets at nearly 470% of gross domestic product, according to the International Monetary Fund.
I think currently the challenges are how we can better meet the needs of our country to develop the real economy and strengthen the overall structural reform, and to establish a sound financial service system as well as building a stronger financial regulatory system.
It's stressed in this year's government work report to accelerate financial system reform and improve the financial services system. There will be support for financial institutions to expand inclusive financial services, standardize the development of local small and medium-sized financial institutions, as well as focusing on solving the problems of financing. Experts say China has made tremendous achievements in both economic development and social progress over the past 5 years. With institutional reform to modernize China's system and capacity for governance, only by removing mechanisms drawbacks can development momentum be strengthened. Liu Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
So let's now talk more about this. Einar, China would now merge China Banking Regulatory Commission and China Insurance Regulatory Commission. Do you think this is a good move? How does it compare with, say, similar organizations in the States?
Well, I think it is a very good move. I mean, overall, you can have different regulation areas, and the SEC is really the top one, but they don't always, they don't do the insurance. In China, you have a still fairly immature system, and new products are coming along. They look a lot to the West to develop different financial products that are bringing in, but they haven't always been what the country needs. And the problem that they have is they have a real economy which produces jobs and is really what is the lifeblood of China. Then you have this speculative economy where everyone's trying to get rich quickly, not necessarily off of a real economy, just because people are buying, so maybe I can make a profit. And the government really wants to curtail that. There's nothing wrong with speculation itself as long as it's based on reality, not rumors on the social network, not inside information, this type of thing. So moving to this real economy, they need to have an ability to make sure that the policies that they're pursuing are in fact being carried out. Shadow banking, good example.
And how are the regulators balancing, promoting financial innovation and also mitigating financial risks?
Well, first of all, the combination of the CBRC and the CIRC, the banking and the insurance regulators together into one single regulator, is a major development. And at present, we actually have CSRC, CBRC, and CIRC to regulate the banking, the insurance, and the securities. So the principle is to regulate and manage each different financial sector as it is. This has its pros and cons, of course. And originally, there was a proposal to combine all three regulators into single one and a regulator, but apparently this is a half step forward, combining the banking and the insurance regulators together, but leaving the securities regulator as still an independent regulator.
Are you saying that the Security Commission could be merged into?
Personally, I think going forward, maybe next round of restructuring, etc., that's a possibility. Okay. And I think the rationale for keeping the securities regulator outside and combining the banking and the insurance regulators is mainly because the banking and the insurance regulators follow very similar patterns in terms of, for example, capital sufficiency, in terms of how you open up your branches from one province to another, etc. So combining these two together has a lot of merit. Further, I think the financial market is changing very quickly, and capital actually crosses around the regulatory boundary without much of a pause. And many financial institutions have grown into financial groups handling both banking and insurance as well as securities matters. So it is a lot of very logical and natural to combine some regulatory functions together to better offer financial services.
And I agree with that, because what you have is that both banking and insurance are long-term investors. What they're doing is, you either get deposits in and you're investing them as a bank, or you're getting premiums in and you're investing those over the long term. So these are really lenders. Very different, I think, from securities, which is a separate entity. The difficulty is when it sounds good, say, oh, I'm going to put everything in one regulatory basket, but you have to start thinking of the core competencies of the people who are going to be involved. And if you have people who understand debt, but not necessarily equity, it can be a problem.
And when you look at the specifics on the reform plan, it says some of the functions and duties of China Banking Regulatory Commission as well as China Insurance Regulatory Commission, including drafting key regulations, prudent supervision, and basic financial system, will belong to People's Bank of China. What does this mean?
Well, at present, the whole financial regulatory system in China involves the PBOC, the central bank at the very top, and the three sectoral regulators on the second tier, that is the banking, insurance, and the securities. So the People's Bank serves as the ultimate regulator for all the financial matters in China. And it is not only just responsible for the issuance of renminbi, for example, or management of the foreign exchange, but it also oversees the overall systemic risks and how to manage the risks in the whole financial sector. And further, if we move one step even higher, financial matters relate directly to the overall health or lack of health of the economic system. So in China, this structure remains intact. Central bank at the top, three regulators on the second tier. Now combining the insurance and the banking insurance together will leave PBOC at the top with two regulatory watchdogs. But also, I think there is a central financial matters regulatory commission, which also plays a very important role. But that's even higher level. That's even more caring for macro systemic matters. So this system in China has worked for the past several decades, and it will continue to work after this round of restructuring.
And I think this policy separating it from administration is very important. I mean, the Chinese government changes things quite often, as we are seeing today, to get to the goal. In the West, it's really about growing institutions. They talk about the culture and the history of an institution. In China, it's really simple. It's pragmatic. We need to change systemic risk. What is necessary to do that? We're going to revamp our institutions in order to achieve this. And it doesn't mean that it'll stay institutions. It could actually change in the future.
And last year, the Office of Financial Stability and Development Committee was also set in the People's Bank of China. Does this mean that the central bank is taking on a bigger role in managing financial market risks?
A bigger role, yes, in a sense. However, I think by setting up the Financial Stability Commission, it is meant to ensure that the financial sector and the real economy, or the rest of the real economy, are not completely separated by a big wall in between. The two actually are the two sides of the same coin, and you cannot live in one area without the interconnection with the other area. And everything which happens in the financial sector may have a direct impact on the rest of the real economy. So maintaining financial stability itself is not only a matter or responsibility for the financial regulators, it is also a responsibility for the person or the agency which oversees the overall health of the Chinese economy at large, including the financial sector as well as the non-financial sector.
Yeah, and as we speak, we're hearing words that they're counting the ballots, so votes are being counted on whether to endorse the Premier's nomination of key posts in the State Council. Let's talk a little bit about this. Can you tell us more about the duties of Vice Premiers, first of all? We're hearing we're going to see 4 Vice Premiers this year. They're going to be a one principal Vice Premier, yes?
Yes, indeed. In China, in the State Council, the Premier is the head, so everything relating to the matters, the portfolio of the State Council stops with the Premier. However, China is so big, the Chinese economy is so complicated, facing all kinds of challenges, so the portfolios are divided up. For not only the 4 Vice Premiers, and each Vice Premier will take a particular portfolio, for example, science, education, health, etc., or agriculture, or financial matters, for example. So each premier will be the principal person in charge of one particular portfolio, and the portfolio could be huge. And then you also talk about 5 state councillors, and each state councillor would also have a portfolio, probably a smaller in scope or magnitude. So in this case, the premier at the top with 4 vice premier and 5 state councillors, each of them taking care as the person in charge of one particular portfolio, and each portfolio may actually contain multiple sub-portfolios, and this is the way, as Anna just said, meant to take care of the day-to-day operation of the Chinese economy, Chinese society operating in all different ways, for example, to make sure that China operates as a huge machine in order and people live in peace and stability.
Okay, I'm gonna take it from here now because we're hearing words that Premier Li Keqiang is going to announce the results of the nomination list or the voting results. And just to give you a sense of what to look forward to, we're gonna see 26 ministries and commissions leaders being elected. Let's listen in now.
According to the voting results, the first session of the 13th MPC has approved Han Zheng, Sun Chunlan, Hu Chunhua, Liu He as Vice Premier of the State Council. Wei Fenghe, Wang Yong, Wang Yi, Xiao Jie, Zhao Kezhi as State Councilors. Xiao Jie as the Secretary General of the State Council. Wang Yi as the Minister of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Wei Fenghe as Minister of Ministry of National Defense. He Lifeng as Minister of National Development and Reform Commission. Chen Baosheng as Minister of Ministry of Education. Wang Zhigang as Minister of Ministry of Science and Technology. Miao Wei as Minister of Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. Ba Te as Minister of the State Ethnic Affairs Commission. Zhao Kezhi as Minister of Ministry of Public Security. Chen Wenqing as Minister of Ministry of State Security. Wang Shuxian as Minister of Ministry of Civil Affairs. Fu Zhenhua as Minister of Ministry of Justice. Liu Kun as Minister of Ministry of Finance. Zhang Jinan as Minister of Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security. Lu Hao as Minister of Ministry of Natural Resources. Li Ganjie as Minister of Ministry of Ecological Environment. Wang Menghui as Minister of Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development. Li Xiaopeng as Minister of Ministry of Transport. He Jinping as Minister of Ministry of Water Resources. Han Changfu as Minister of Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. Zhong Shan as Minister of Ministry of Commerce. Luo Shugang as Minister of Ministry of Culture and Tourism. Ma Xiaowei as Minister of the National Health Commission. Sun Shaocheng as the Minister of Ministry of Veterans Affairs. Wang Yupu as Minister of Ministry of Emergency Management. Yi Gang as Governor of People's Bank of China. Wu Zejun as Auditor-General of National Audit Office.
All right, there you heard the results of the vote today. We're seeing a major reshuffle today. We're seeing 4 brand new vice premier and also 5 new state councilors. But Wang Yi is being nominated as state councilor this time. Let's talk about this. Wang Yong also stayed as state councilor. So we have 4 new state councilors and 1 from the last administration. Any surprise come from that result, Victor, first of all?
No, I don't think so. I think all this is well planned. and well structured. And I think all these people nominated and now confirmed are very solid leaders, and they have experience, whole-ranging experience, for example, and considered very qualified for this job. And
what are the qualities and political experiences that made them here? Based on what have they been selected? Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
For example, the executive vice premier Han Zheng, he has been the party secretary of Shanghai, mayor of Shanghai, important leader of several divisions, bureaus in Shanghai. He spent his whole life in Shanghai. And however, Shanghai has turned out to be the largest economic city in China, and very sophisticated, involving very high level, very high top-notch financial services, for example, and also with very vibrant industrial manufacturing capacities, and has emerged as one of the most important international port city, international aviation city, for example. Therefore, to be the mayor and later the party secretary of Shanghai, probably with a population of about 25 million, which can make it one of the bigger European countries, for example, really has given Mr. Han Zheng a whole range of experiences and qualifications. And now I think, being the executive vice premier of the State Council, to be assistant to Premier Li Keqiang, but also take care of the portfolio of responsibilities in his own portfolio. We expect that Mr. Han Zheng really to live up to all the expectation from the government, from the people, and be a very outstanding leader in this round of the State Council, and make his contribution to the management of China as a whole, rather than management of Shanghai as a city.
So 36 names being announced, 4 vice premiers, 5 state councilors, 1 general secretary, 26 ministerial level leaders. Anything that interests you the most, Einar?
Yes, I mean, first off, let's look at the path of these different individuals. There's basically 2. One is that they came up from what they call the grassroots. I mean, they started at the village level and they worked their way up through the municipal level all the way to where they are now, which is at the very top levels of the administrative side of the government. All right. The other way that has gone is some of these individuals have been overseas. They studied at Harvard University or other places or in France, and they come back here. And this is a generational shift. These are people who speak other languages. They've had other experiences. They're bringing a lot of their expertise and observations about the West to China. So you can expect a very different kind of attitude and approach to these things. And that's why there are these kind of generational shifts. China is constantly looking for the best of each generation to offer what they can.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you look at this selection process? Because a lot of people say China's political system is one of the most competitive in the world as a political meritocracy. You've got to work your way up, like Einar said, from the grassroots level, and you've got to be very good at what you do.
Absolutely. If we look at the foreign ministry, for example, Foreign Minister Wang Yi now has been nominated and confirmed as one of the 5 state councillors. He spent his whole career in the foreign ministry, started up in the Japanese section in the Asian Affairs Department in the Foreign Ministry, and he really demonstrated his outstanding qualities very early in his career, and then continued on to his very important diplomatic career as the head of the Asian Affairs Department, for example, rising all the way up to the foreign minister. And in his capacity as foreign minister, he really handled very, very tough international challenges and crises as the chief diplomat of China, and he represented China very outstandingly, and he has won widespread acclaim from his counterparts in many other countries. And now, as a state councillor, it would help him it will enable him to perform his functions as the top diplomat in China better, mainly because not only the foreign ministry is under his leadership, but also other functions partially or wholly related to China's foreign matters may also fall within his portfolio. And the expectation is that he will definitely live up to the expectation and contribute China's diplomatic work and the foreign affairs management.
And one of the things that is really unique about the Chinese diplomats is it's quiet. It is very disciplined competency. I mean, you're not seeing the kind of things that we're seeing right now where the, Rex Tillerson is out by tweet or brought in and things like that from an oil company. These are people who are lifelong civil servants. They understand the system that they're supposed to represent. They are completely informed about the policies. They're not wondering what the next policy is going to be or if there's going to be a major shift. They just do the day-to-day work that is necessary to advance.
Yeah, and China's foreign ministry is a very unique case as well. It's rather an extension of China's domestic policies. It was primarily to serve the country's economic development goal. That was the most primary goal above all else. But will we see a change from now on? What do you think?
I think
because the words pragmatic or no strings attached, those are the words that are being used to describe China's foreign policy in the past. Will we see a shift?
Exactly. I think the Chinese foreign ministry over the past 40 years has really changed a great deal, not only in terms of the size of the foreign ministry, in terms of the numbers of the diplomats, but also very importantly in terms of the new functions added to the foreign ministry. For example, consular affairs used to be very, very important, but relatively speaking, small in scope, because 40 years ago, China's consular services was not necessarily very, very big in size or importance. But now, with more than 100 million Chinese people traveling abroad every year, with Chinese interest everywhere in the world, and with Chinese people sometimes caught up in danger, being hijacked, for example, or going into areas where civil war or turmoil were happening, the consular services need to be significantly beefed up. And I think the foreign ministry has won tremendous amount of support and recognition by people in China who travel everywhere in the world for the immediate, prompt, and very effective delivery of consular services to the Chinese citizens everywhere they are in the world. Further, I would say, as part of the Chinese transformation, the foreign ministry has taken on economic matters, mainly because when you talk about foreign affairs or diplomatic services, one key part of that is China's evolving and increasing economic and trading relations with the rest of the world. You cannot talk about diplomacy without thinking about and caring about economic and financial aspect of whatever China stands for. So this is really changing very fast.
All right, hold your thoughts. Let's take a short break, and when we come back to this, you're now watching a special coverage of the two sessions. We'll be right back.
Two sessions is an exciting time. China has a rich history, but with lofty goals for the future.
As an African journalist covering the two sessions, I will share my insights into what the policies entail and how they will affect my continent and the rest of the world.
1.4 billion people heading in the same direction. How will the policies of the coming days keep the country on track?
Controlling financial risk is most critical. Broadening anti-corruption is most meaningful. President Xi Jinping's vision for 2035 and for 2050 is most enduring.
A team of journalists from China and around the world looking at critically important issues that will help define the 21st century.
The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
If we move together, we can have a dance.
Straight into the eyes.
Poverty alleviation achievement in China is unprecedented.
For me, it's a responsibility.
Straightforward and straight into the new era.
To know more and to sense more.
Straight Talk with Tian Wei from the two sessions.
Welcome back to our special coverage. Today, 4 vice premier of the State Council have been just elected, and here are their profiles. First of all, we are going to take a look at the resume of Mr. Han Zheng, currently a member of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee. Han Zheng has been elected Vice Premier of the State Council. And born in April 1954, Han Zheng graduated from a master's degree in economics from the Institute of International Studies at East China Normal University in Shanghai. Han spent most of his political career in Shanghai. And from 1991 to 1995, he served in various positions, including Secretary of Communist Youth League Shanghai Municipal Committee and head of Shanghai's Luwan District. And ahead of the 2010 Shanghai World Expo, Han was named Deputy Director of the Organizing Committee, as well as the Executive Director of the Executive Committee. And after serving as Vice Mayor of Shanghai for 5 years, Han became mayor in 2003, a position he held until 2012. He was Deputy Secretary of the CPC Shanghai Municipal Committee for 10 years until 2012, before spending 5 years at the committee's secretary. And also Han joined the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee at last year's CPC National Congress. And second up is Ms. Sun Chunlan. Sun Chunlan is currently a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee. She has just been elected this morning as the Vice Premier of the State Council. Now, born in 1950, Sun Chunlan earned a master's degree in politics at the Central Party School in Beijing. She spent most of her early career in northeast China's Liaoning province, serving as Deputy Secretary of the CPC Liaoning Provincial Committee from 1997 to 2005 and Secretary of CPC Dalian Municipal Committee from 2001 to 2005. Now, between 2005 to 2009, Sun served as Secretary of the leading party members group of All China Federal of Trade Unions. Now, in 2009, she was named Secretary of the Fujian CPC Provincial Committee. And in 2012, she joined the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and was also named Secretary of the CPC Tianjin Municipal Committee. And 2 years later, she became the head of CPC Central Committee's United Front Work Department, a position she held until last year. And thirdly is Hu Chunhua. She has been elected Vice Premier of the State Council as well, who has been a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee since 2012. And born in 1963, Hu Chunhua graduated from Peking University with a Bachelor of Arts in Chinese Language and Literature. Now, he spent around 20 years working in Tibet, ending his time there as Executive Deputy Secretary at the CPC Tibet Autonomous Region Committee. And he also has worked 6 years in the Communist Youth League, first as one of the secretaries before moving up to become first secretary of the Central Committee Secretariat in 2006. And 2 years later, he worked as governor of northern China's Hebei province before becoming the secretary of CPC's Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region Committee in 2009. And he then served as secretary of the CPC Guangdong Provincial Committee until 2017. And lastly, we have Liu He. Liu He has been elected Vice Premier of the State Council today. He was the Director of the General Office for Financial and Economic Affairs and also Vice Minister of National Development and Reform Commission. Born in January 1952, he holds a Master of Economics degree from China's Renmin University, as well as a Master of Public Administration degree from Harvard University. He started his career as a teacher of industrial economy at Renmin University in China in 1983. And later, he worked for the National Planning Commission over 10 years, mainly on long-term planning and industrial policies. From 1998 to 2003, he mainly worked for the State Council Information Office. And from 2003 to 2018, he served as the Director of the General Office of Central Leading Group for Financial and Economic Affairs and Vice Minister of the National Development as well as Reform Commission. Now, the outgoing central bank governor Zhou Xiaochuan will retire from his job after 15 years of service. During his long career at China's central bank, he has been a firm advocate of reforms. As the next central bank governor is set to be elected, let's now take a look back at Zhou's legacy.
Zhou was appointed as the central bank governor in December 2012. In January 2013, he also assumed chairman of the central bank's Monetary Policy Committee. His appointment was extended twice in 2008 and 2013, making him the longest-serving central bank chief in the history of China. Throughout his career, Zhou has been a firm reformist of China's monetary and financial systems. In 2003, Chinese major state-owned banks were struggling with a high ratio of non-performing assets. To ease the banking industry's predicament, the government decided to adopt shareholding reforms. The big 5 state-owned banks were subsequently transformed into a mixed ownership structure by introducing private and foreign investors. Zhou Xiaochuan was leading a special working group to supervise experimental projects of the reforms. Under his leadership, the central bank provided substantial aid to the success of the reforms. The interest rate liberalization reform was on the agenda of Zhou's third mandate. In 2013, the central bank announced a full liberalization of loan rates, and with the introduction of deposit insurance, the bank announced the liberalization of deposit rates for financial institutions in 2015. Another remarkable achievement of Zhou's central bank is RMB internationalization. The process started in 2005 with the establishment of a floating exchange rate. With reference to multiple currencies other than the US dollar, the reform carried on with experimental cross-border yuan settlement projects in 2009 in the domestic market, and since then in overseas markets. In 2016, the RMB joined the IMF Special Drawing Rights Basket.
So let's talk more about this. As we mentioned, Zhou Xiaochuan has retired from the PBOC's governor from this position, and Yi Gang is now being elected as the new governor of PBOC. What can we look forward to, monetary policy-wise, future direction?
I think Mr. Yi Gang has a very solid educational background as well as a working background. He actually earned his academic degrees in the United States. He started up as a young and aspiring student over there and spent quite a few years over there. So he knows the U.S. situation quite well. He speaks excellent English, and then he started and initiated several academic societies while still in the United States, gathering Chinese students of similar minds together to exchange views and talk about various kinds of things, including China's reform and economic development. Later, he decided to come back to China, and he worked with the PBOC ever since, rising up in the ranks and files, and eventually became the head of the SAFE, State Administration of Foreign Exchange. Later, he became a vice governor of PBOC. And I think Mr. Yi is a typical example of Chinese students studying abroad who wanted to come back and find a place and a position of importance to work and devote his academic and working experience and eventually excel.
Yeah.
And now I think with his appointment as the governor of the PBOC, he will contribute to maintaining the financial stability of China and also the management of the foreign exchange reserve in China, but also providing a very solid and stable, steady hand over the financial management of China for the coming several years.
He's also a protege of Li Xiaochuan, so no changes are expected. I mean, he was also a professor in the United States at Purdue University, speaks English fluently, obviously. As I said, this kind of a new generation who are bringing a lot of expertise. And it's not just about knowing the American system. It's just the existing Western financial system that China really entered into in earnest in 2001 when it joined the WTO. So I completely agree with Victor on this. This is a good example of how China is able to attract back some leading students to actually contribute and be part of the system.
Thank you very much. Now, another man we want to take a look at is, of course, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. He's just been nominated, he's been elected as the state councilor and also the foreign minister. And he answered questions from a wide range of diplomatic issues to the press. Here are some of the reviews of the headlines. Take a look.
Competition aside, China and the United States don't have to be rivals, but we should strive to be partners in cooperation. Trade war is never the right solution. In a globalized world, it is particularly unhelpful, as it will harm the initiator as well as the target country. China's proposal of suspension for suspension was the right prescription for the problem and created basic conditions for the improvement of inter-Korean relations.
现在又到了检验各方
Now is a crucial moment for testing the sincerity of the parties.
随着中国的持续发展
As China continues to grow, the first theory has collapsed and become an international laughingstock.
只要日方
If Japan does not prevaricate, flip-flop, or backpedal, and instead comes to terms with China's development and welcomes it, China will be willing to act in the same spirit and work with Japan to put our relationship back on the track of healthy and steady growth.
So in just a short while, a member, 10 member of the senior state council members will be sworn in front of the National People's Congress, and we are waiting for that to happen. When that happens, we're going to take you live to the Great Hall of the People. But in the meantime, I want to take a look at the profile of the foreign minister. He's now being elevated to the state council because previously the foreign ministry of China, this is very interesting, it does not It actually executes the foreign policy, but it does not make the country's foreign policy. But now with the foreign minister elevated to the state council, will the foreign ministry have a bigger say in foreign policy making? What do you think?
Well, the Chinese foreign policy involves a whole overarching structure. At the very top, it's the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Over the past 5 years, he is truly the real leader of China's foreign policy. At the second level, you have Mr. Yang Jiechi, who is now a member of the Politburo, who used to be the former state councilor and the former foreign minister and the former Chinese ambassador to the United States. Now, on the third level, it involves the state councilor and foreign minister Wang Yi and the whole apparatus of the foreign ministry itself. But as the state councilor, Mr. Wang Yi probably will also be in charge of several other portfolios. But coming back to the functions and the responsibilities of the foreign ministry, yes, indeed, it is the chief doorkeeper of China's foreign policy. In the rest of the world, it truly represents China. And in terms of, for example, implementation or initiation, I think the foreign ministry is important in both respects, mainly because by implementing all the decisions, not only by the foreign ministry, but also from the central government.
Sorry to interrupt. We're hearing words that senior members of the State Council will be sworn in as we speak in front of the NPC. Let's go live to the scene there. And here's how China State Council works.
For this morning's plenary session is completed.
根据第13届全国人民代表大会第1次会议主席团关于宪法
The rule of oath allegiance to the Constitution for the first session of the 13th MPC made by the Presidium. Now we proceed to the swearing-in ceremony by taking constitutional oath. Now the first session of the 13th National People's Congress oath allegiance to the Constitution ceremony starts. Please all rise. For the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Please be seated.
现在请
Now,
中华人民共和国国务院副总理韩正
Comrade Han Zheng,
孙春兰
Sun Chunlan,
胡春华
Hu Chunhua,
刘鹤
Liu He as vice premiers of the State Council,
魏凤和
and Comrade Wei Fenghe,
王勇
Wang Yong,
王毅
Wang Yi,
肖捷
Xiao Jie,
赵克志宣誓
Zhao Kezhi as state councilors
由韩
to
正
take the
领
oath
事
allegiance to the Constitution. Comrade Han Zheng will take the lead. Please come to the center of the stage. I do swear I pledge to be allegiant to the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, safeguard the constitutional authority, perform obligations given by the law, be loyal to the country, and be loyal to the people, be committed and honest in my duty, accept the people's supervision, and to work for a great modern socialist country that is prosperous, strong, democratic, culturally advanced, harmonious, and beautiful.
All right, that was the big unveil. 10 senior members of the State Council have been sworn in. Quite a solemn scene there, very ceremonial with the music. Let me bring in our commentators, Victor Gao and Einar Tengen. How important is this ceremony? How important is the fact that they are pledging allegiance to the Constitution in front of the entire NPC Congress, in front of the people of the country?
I think the constitutional ceremony, swearing ceremony, is very important, both substantively as well as symbolically. They are doing this in front of the whole NPC delegates, in front of President Xi Jinping or the other senior leaders, but more importantly, they are doing the swearing-in ceremony in front of the whole nation. Everyone in China is watching, and also in front of the whole world, because China is now getting more and more important. Whatever happens in China, including especially such important events, are being watched very closely by the rest of the world. So it will rededicate themselves, they will recommit themselves to the causes and the defending of the Chinese Constitution.
And no one is above the law, no one is above the Constitution.
Well, and symbolically, before you had this, it was just they would stand up there on stage and people would clap and that would be the end of it. And what this does is it symbolizes that there is a document, that there's a rule of law, which is everybody is looking up to that. It's not the people anymore, I mean the people on the stage anymore. It's what their service is to and under.
Yeah, it's a great sense of symbolism.
And one of the things I wanted to pick up on what Victor said is this: why is Wang Yi being elevated? Well, quite frankly, I mean, since the days of Zhou Enlai, there's never been a period that China has been more active. I mean, you have the climate accord, you have the Belt and Road Initiative, you have the peacekeeping efforts. China is now engaged globally, and before, I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was more information gathering and reporting and then executing. Now they need to be more involved in the actual crafting and to draw on kind of the resources of the people who've been in these countries and can give them good advice.
Yeah, we're hearing words. Our correspondent Su Yuping is standing by at the Great Hall of the People. We're going to get to her in just a short while, but let's talk about the new cabinet. This is known as the central government, also known as the new cabinet of China. What are the top priorities for this new cabinet?
I think China is now in a very unprecedented position, both at home as well as in the world. And I think the main task of the new cabinet or the new state council is to steer a steady course for China's domestic economic development, keep the momentum of opening to the outside world and reform, implementing all the major decisions adopted for China's reform, and also enhance China's position on the global stage, make sure that the One Belt, One Road initiative will be fully and successfully implemented, and also to ensure that the Chinese people live in peace and stability and continue to enjoy prosperity, and then also to make sure China in the world is to be welcomed, understood, and appreciated in a sense for its contribution to peace and stability on the global stage.
I agree with everything, Victor, but in terms of the three policies, it's still poverty, pollution, and systemic risk. That's internally. Externally, they have to deal with what's coming at them. If Donald Trump throws $60 billion worth of tariffs directed at China under its 301 program, that's going to be an issue. How China navigates this kind of new reality is something that has to be done time and time. And you've seen not only these people, but Wang Qishan has been brought in because he's an old hand. He's what they call the firefighter, I guess, out there. But these are the people who understand where the U.S. is and have a better pulse. So he's putting his team in place that can respond appropriately.
Yeah, and the Premier also said in this year's government work report that China will create a new landscape in all-round opening up. What's your understanding of this new landscape, and how will this cabinet execute his vision?
Yes, indeed. I think the Premier Li Keqiang emphasized that point, and he raised a lot of expectation from not only the whole country but also from the rest of the world. I think the next round or the higher form of opening up would involve both going out as well as coming in. In terms of coming in, many foreign companies operating in China want to have greater access, more equal treatment, and better and more transparent handling of the issues that they are raising. For example, they want to increase the equity shareholding percentage in some of the institutions. They want to set up their wholly owned operations in China. They want to have equal access to Chinese banking. They want to have their IPR rights better protected. I think the Chinese government will do a lot of work to ensure that all these points raised by the foreign companies operating in China will be very carefully listened to, and the good suggestions will be accepted, and new policies will be adopted to make sure China opens up more and more, and China will treat fairly and equally foreign companies operating in China with the Chinese companies, either state-owned or privately owned. In terms of going out, definitely China's flow of capital, flow of manufacturing capacities, flow of expertise and know-how, and flow of Chinese managers, for example, will continue, and China will be better and more integrated with the rest of the world. So in terms of both flowing out or flowing in, China needs to open up better.
And I would put, China has now reached the apex in terms of certain technologies. If you're talking about online shopping, banking, a lot of areas, you have Huawei with their technical superiority. So now China's in a very different position than it was a few years ago. It actually has an opportunity to be a world leader and to take its technology out. Huawei with the new 5G standard, for example, they're really being aggressive. They're getting pushback from the West, especially in the U.S., where they were basically said you can't come here. And I think China is trying to say, look, we're going to be a lot more fair, but we want you to be fair with us. Mm-hmm. So there's a quid pro quo in this, and I think they're trying to normalize the international standing of China as both a place to do business and a place to business will be coming from.
Yeah, and as you said, a number of the senior leaders are educated overseas, so presumably they will know better about what the world needs from China, and essentially increase and expand the scope and quality of this opening up
process. I think they can cut through a lot of it's a mystery to many people who have not been abroad exactly what people want. What is all this noise? Why don't you sit down and talk to us? Now, they're in a unique position. They've been professors. They've been at the Harvard School, the Kennedy School at Harvard. They understand these people. They understand what the real currents are versus the kind of political noise that's out there constantly in the background.
Yeah, a new generation of leaders looking forward to see what kind of change can they bring about to the country. Now, let's go live to our correspondent Su Yuting, who is standing at the Ministers' Corridor. It is where the ministers will meet the media and give brief interview. What's so special about this time is that will be the last time of the Minister Corridor, and the 26 newly elected ministers will meet the press for the very first time. So Yuting, this can be regarded as a media debut for the new ministers. How's the mood there? Tell us more.
Yes, Qiuyuan, exactly. This is the 5th time for the launching of the Ministers' Corridor. And you can sense the atmosphere around me, you know, that there are huge crowds of journalists and cameramen waiting here for the arrival of the new ministers to come here to answer the questions from the journalists and also to talk about the future policies that will guide the country's future development in the next 5 years. And as you can see behind me, that there are increasing number of the journalists here, because you know that this time the new ministers will just give their answers to the media's questions, and it's very important for them this time because you know that the institutional reform is already on the top agenda of this year's 2 sessions, and you know that there are more anticipation from the media to know the answers from the new ministers, and you know that this time the ministers' corridor is much open than usual because for the journalists they can even scan a quick response WeChat account of the Ministers' Corridor and submit their questions to the ministers. So we're all very looking forward to the new ministers coming here and answer questions from the journalists. Qiuyuan.
So what can we expect from the new ministers? What kind of questions are journalists around you want to ask?
Yes, Qiuyuan, you know that reform is the key word during this year's 2 sessions, and institutional reform has already been taken to strengthen the government's structure and also make the government service much more people-oriented one. And it will just establish 26 new ministries. And you know that I've already talked to some of the journalists, and they told me that they're curious about what measures the new ministries will take in the near future. For example, the Ministry of Ecological Environment, a journalist told me that they're very curious about what kind of policies will be taken by the Ministry of Ecological Environment to protect the environment, to improve the air quality and curb pollution. And another one is very important is that the country has already transitioned from the high-speed growth to high-quality development. So high-quality development is also another keyword and also another topic for the journalists to ask about the new ministers. And they know that they want to know what kind of measures will be taken to boost the development of the innovation-driven economy. And lastly, the journalists also told me that they're curious about what kind of policies will be taken to improve the well-being of the people, including the medical services and also reforms in the medical sector. Back to you, Qiuyuan.
Thank you very much, Su Yuting, joining us live from the Ministers' Corridor at the Great Hall of the People. Thank you. And we're just expecting the 26 newly elected ministers to speak to the press any moment from now. In the meantime, let me bring in our current affairs commentator, Victor Gao and Einar Tengen. What would you be specifically looking out for from these new ministers? Einar first this time.
Well, I think everyone's looking for the details. I mean, we know the broad brush of all the plans. We know where everyone wants to go. The question is how you're going to do it. I don't know that they're going to release these details at this point. I think there's a tremendous amount of work initially to be done in terms of reorganization. I mean, you just don't, you have to take old ministries, you literally have to put them together. I mean, possibly new offices, a whole new organizational plan, things like that. So they really have their work cut out for them. I think you can expect that a lot of the work has already been done in terms of policy and things that they want to float. They've had a number of experiments out there, models that they've been tinkering with to make sure that they work properly before they roll them out. So this is the kind of thing that I think they should be asking. I don't know what they will be asking.
What about you, Victor? What are you interested the most about?
Well, I think this will be the first time for these 26 new ministers to face the nation together and face the world. So the impression will be very important. They need to really make a very important first impression on the nation and on the world. Secondly, I think every one of them probably will have a chance to speak to the nation, to answer briefly questions addressed to them, and people will have a chance to see how they speak, how they look, how they deliver, how they perform. So this is also important. But more substantively, I think they probably will describe what's their vision is, what's their aspirations, because many of them will have very, very different things to do. For the foreign ministry, for example, it's more or less the same. But then for the newly created ministries like the Veterans Affairs Ministry, the Emergency Management Ministry, etc., the new ministers probably need to think about hiring people, setting up offices, probably lining up budget, how to do all these admin stuff, etc., before they really jump into the depth and the width of all their responsibilities. So each one of them will have different things to think about. But at the very top, I think they think about the same thing. That is how to serve the people, how to make sure that ministries will perform the functions designed for them to make sure that the Chinese government is leaner but more effective and deliver all the services and live up to all these expectations.
And what do you think of the whole idea of Ministers' Corridor? I mean, this is a new setup. We don't have that in the past. This is the first year we've got a chance for those ministers to directly speak to journalists, answer questions from the press. Do you think they did a good job? What do you think?
Well, I think it's a wonderful idea, but it's a completely high pressure. If you've not been trained in how to present yourself, it can be nerve-wracking. I mean, all of a sudden it's fine to be, I mean, most of these people have made appearances, they made speeches and things like that, but suddenly be on national TV. You're elected, you have to, as Victor says, you have to reorganize your entire department, and now people are going to say, oh, well, what are you going to do? And I think that can be very, very tough. But it's kind of trial by fire. They're going to be watched very carefully about how they handle it, if they're able to be an effective communicator. And this is part of the kind of growing up in the leadership of China.
Yeah, what do you think, Victor? This whole idea of Minister Corridor, are we going to see them next year? Are we going to keep it?
I think this is a wonderful thing, mainly because people in China, in the world, get a chance to see these ministers in real action, and they want to see how they think, how they behave, how they speak, how they handle themselves, and how they project their visions into the future. And this is a very rare opportunity, because sometimes you can meet with one minister, sometimes you can meet with two ministers, but to have the new 26 ministers all lined up together in the ministers' corridor is a great thing, and I hope it will happen more and more often, not only next year, but probably once every month in my own home.
I don't think you'll be very popular with the ministers.
You're now looking at the live picture of the so-called minister corridors. We're expecting the newly elected 26 ministers and governors of PBOC, including other directors of the commissions, will show up at the corridor and take questions directly from the journalists. All right, so let's talk more about this. We are waiting for that to happen. Let's talk more about this opening up plan of China, because it really goes into different aspects, right? What about China's soft power? What about the culture open up?
Well, everywhere I go, people ask me, are you from China? I say, yes, I'm from China. I know Jackie Chan, for example. Oh, people say, oh my God, Jackie Chan is our hero. Or sometimes I say, I come from China and I know Yao Ming. I say, oh my God, Yao Ming, you know Yao Ming, for example. So China has soft power. China is known to the outside world, but not necessarily in all respects. And I think to make another Yao Ming or make another Jackie Chan, you need to do your homework. We need to really come up with the good stories and have a way to tell the story to the rest of the world. So I think now China has a lot of hard power. We really need to spend more on thinking about our soft power and smart power. We do not need sharp power, of course, but soft power, yes. Smart power, even more so, and every one of us need to think about doing the right thing, and then tell the right story about what we did about the right thing.
And I would add on that, I would add one other person who's really increasing here, Jack Ma. I mean, because he's become the hero not only to people in the U.S. but around the world as somebody who's been very innovative. And I think these are very influential people. If you start talking about the United States, yes, you talk about stars and things like that. But you also talk about Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and Apple and all of these companies where they've really produced something. They're creating the next things. In terms of the culture, though, I don't think China needs to do a K-pop, the Korean type of thing. I think it really is trying to bridge the knowledge gap between the Chinese people and people outside. This is one of the things that I see consistently. If you go to India, if you go to other nations, you go to the United States, you ask them about China, they really don't know very much. And a lot of what they think they know is unfortunately influenced by the popular media, which is generally fairly negative on China because it's seen as a kind of, as Donald Trump has put it, a group that has become a competitor to the U.S. And I think that needs to change, especially when you have the face of China with 100 million tourists going out. It's very, very important that they know what the local conditions and things are. I mean, certain things are not acceptable in other places, and they might be acceptable here. No one wants to be rude, they just simply don't know. So educating them, and this is something that it's two ways when you're having these diplomatic functions on behalf of Chinese going abroad. Part of that is making sure that the Chinese face is a good one.
Yeah, and
you don't want the ugly Chinese, like the ugly Americans used to be, or the ugly Japanese.
We also need the right talent for a lot of key positions, sectors in the country. We set up the new immigration ministry, but a lot of people say, for example, in the financial sector, we really lack the right talent in financial regulating institutions. The top tier talents are working for global investment institutions like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. The second best people are working in domestic commercial banks, domestic investment banks. But for the regulating institutions, we really don't have that much talent. That's a lot of people's arguments. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree in terms of things, but there are always people who are willing to set aside their, let us say, personal ambitions and financial things. I mean, you see that with some of the people. I mean, Liu He could obviously be making a lot of money doing something else. There are people who are going to do that. I mean, you have the same thing in the U.S., and it's not always good to have that revolving door between business and government, as we have seen. There are potential conflicts. There are things that occur. The regular people, a lot of the people who support Donald Trump, do so because they feel that this revolving door has not served them. It's only served the interests of those people in there. So it's a very, very hard nut to crack. I mean, there's a balance in there, but it's not clear how you can do it other than trying to find the right people who want to do the right thing for their country.
What are your thoughts on attracting overseas talents to come to China?
Well, I think attracting talents and identifying talents and putting the good talents to the right job is a constant thing. And it never ends because you cannot find the talent and think that's the end of the story. No. And secondly, talents themselves also need to interact with each other to create better miracles. That means the whole environment is also very, very important. And I think for the Chinese government to really attract talent is an ongoing thing, is a continuous thing, is a never-ending thing. And the establishment of the National Immigration Service is actually a step in that. It allows people in China to go out, but also it would enable very highly qualified people from everywhere in the world, from all countries in the world, to be identified and to be attracted to China.
Yeah, some experts also said the pace of China's financial opening up has fallen behind its real economy, and that exchange rate regime of RMB should be more flexible. What do you think?
You hear this thing all the time. I mean, I think 6.9% growth is pretty good given the rest of the world, and it's a fairly stable economy. China continues to balance its needs internally and externally. It's not going to throw up. This is why they've said they want to have quality as opposed to quantity at this point. It's not about quick growth, it's about sustainable. So yeah, I mean, it may not be to everybody's liking. There might be businesses who said, look, I would like this, but it's not just a business economy. There are poor people. There are people who have other needs. There's a society as a whole. And people have to kind of take that into account before they just start saying, serve me, and my interests.
And the former central bank governor, Zhou Xiaochuan, mentioned at the opening that the opening of the financial sector includes not only widening market access to foreign investors, but also the promotion of global use of RMB. We've talked about internationalization of RMB for a long time. What are the efforts so far?
I think the globalization or internationalization of the renminbi is a mega trend that we are living through, and I personally hope it can be accelerated. And also, to really achieve globalization of renminbi, you need to really enable the free flow of renminbi out of China and into China. Right now, for whatever reasons, sometimes there are ups and downs, sometimes there are more restrictions, sometimes there are more freedom, etc. I think consistency is also important. So globalization of renminbi is a must, it's happening. I don't think there is any second largest economy in the world ever since the Industrial Revolution whose currency is not a global currency. Renminbi need to be a global currency, but we need to build up all these institutional mechanisms to allow the true globalization of renminbi.
That sounds fine, but I mean, China was denied market economy status. I mean, it's said, okay, we play by the rules, we go by this, and then all of a sudden they move the rug from under it. And that kind of thing, China has to react to it. China is not it's a very powerful country, but it still has a tremendous number of people who are in need.
If I may add a point, it's very encouraging to see that EU has decided no longer to look at the so-called market economy status as a criteria in dealing with other countries. And I think that's a good development for China, and I hope the United States will do the same thing as the EU has done.
You can hope, but it doesn't look probable at this point. But I think the developments in the U.S. are actually helping the international of yuan, because what's happening is that as the dollar starts to dive, as the U.S. is seen as an unreliable partner, right, as the sheer amount of the American economy as part of the world GDP continues to fall, not in absolute terms, they're still growing, just in terms of relative terms. At that point, China is offering a safe, steady haven. And I think that's going to be more important than a lot of these kind of let free float.
All right, thank you. So we're hearing words that Minister Ma Junsheng is going to take questions from journalists. As you can see, he's stepping on the red carpet now.
So this is the head of the National Postal Bureau. Now the floor is open. This is from Xinhua News Agency. My question is that China ranked #1 for the volume of the postal packages, and on a yearly basis, there were over 300 million packages. And what are the challenges we have right now, and what are the solutions? Thank you. Thank you for your question. In China, now we're entering into a stage for rapid development. For last year, we have reached 40 billion packages, which takes up 40% of the global share. In the past 10 years, China has a year-over-year growth rate for the 42% and a 47% growth rate in the past 5 years. So we can see a very rapid development in China's market. In terms of the quantity, China's volume has exceeded the total for the US and the European Union. And China will continue this momentum to develop. I have confidence for it. As long as we have a very sound policy and a path, and everyone work hard to make contribution to this development, I'm pretty sure that China will have a very fast development in the postal business. I think in 3 areas we have the advantages. The first one, we see that we have very effective model for the 40 billion packages. Half of them are contributed to the e-commerce. When people order online, the packages will be delivered offline. This model can reduce the cost for the transportation, can also help to improve the consumption. And we also have a huge demand for the market for this kind of model. As of yesterday, we have already passed 21% of this year. In this almost 3 months' time, the development of China's postal package has already reached a 30% growth. And also, our platform is a public platform, not only serve the express packages, and also contributed to the development of the manufacturing. As long as we have a stable internet, we can use our platform as the inventory place for the manufacturing industry. And through these years, we also have a very rapid development for the cross-border in China. Every day, we have 7 to 7 million packages for cross-border packages. In 7 to 8 years ago, we would never expect this figure. In China, we have only 700 netizens, but in the world, there were more than 2 billion netizens. We are very confident that the development of China's postal industry will thrive in the future. And you also mentioned about the questions and problems that we have right now, and I think there were 4 major problems. The first one is about the infrastructure for the end users. Sometimes we do see some obstacles in developing the infrastructure. For example, sometimes we are not very convenient for the parcel stations and the transportation, and we do have to improve the last mile delivery issue. And also, we mentioned about the issue how to deal with the packing materials. Also, the government have emphasized on how to ensure the security of the packages. And the State Council has held several sessions to discuss these issues and concerns. And we also come up with a series of policies and measures to deal with these issues. With the strengthening emphasis of the government and efforts of the enterprises, I still feel positive about the development. Thank you. This is from Shandong Mobile Net. I have a question about the real name system about the packages. I heard that by the end of the year, the real name system will be implemented throughout China. But one of the concerns is that about the information security. So, any challenges for implementing this real name system for the package? Thank you. So it is a national policy to roll out this real name system. In China, we can see the real name system is adopted in many industries, for example, the railway system and the telecom system. So, by using the real name system in the postal business, it is a way to help China to further strengthen the power and develop our economy. So we think it is very important for us to implement this real name system, and we also design a mechanism Start from last year, we run pilot tests in around 153 cities. And we do see a lot of the companies cooperating with us. As of now, every day, we have around 100 million packages that are using this real name system. For this year's target, we hope that 17% of our total packages can be using this real name system. But we do think the individuals need some time to get to better understand this system. And for some remote areas, maybe their infrastructure is not built well enough to support this real name system. We have to tackle these problems. And you also mentioned the concern about the information security issue. When we start to implement this system, we take this concern as a key priority. We take 3 measures. The first one, we will rate the system by security level. At the beginning, we collect the information and then we transmit this information. So for each step, we will monitor the information to ensure it's safe and secure. And second, we will continue to improve the information technology and to put in some coding methods for the information. You can also see that on the express sheet, some of the information are actually invisible. And the third measure is that the government will continue to regulate this process. If the government found that some of the personal information are leaked, so they will contact the security station, the police security station, to ensure that the information is safety. And recently, we are talking about the targeted poverty alleviation. And they're saying that during the development of the e-commerce, the National Postal Bureau has played a key role. So they want to ask what are the actions the National Postal Bureau will take to help improve the poverty alleviation in this area. We can see all the rural area in China has a postal office. And 90% of those villages and rural areas can use our postal service. And we also have a project to send parcels to the rural area. Currently, the coverage of the postal service is around 87%, which benefits around 600 million rural citizens. And we also see very good performance of this project. I just mentioned that we have a total number of packages around 40 billion, and actually 10 billion packages are coming from those rural areas. And we do make a lot of contribution for the rural revitalization and the targeted poverty alleviation. And in the future, we will continue to develop the rural postal service areas in accordance to the spirit from the 19th CPC National Congress and the first central document. And the second, for the byproducts in those rural areas, we will try to build up those brands and try to promote these kind of agriculture products. For example, if the packages for these agricultural products can reach over 10 million, we will launch a special kind of service to promote these products.
好，感谢马局长。好，谢谢马局长。
Thank you, Mr. Ma.
好，下面我们有请下一位部长。
Next, we will invite another minister.
国家体育总局鲁仲文局长来到台前。
It is from the General Administration of Sport.
谢谢主持人，中评社周
Thank
明
you
晚记者
very
提
much.
问。局长您好，我们知道这个平昌冬奥会
We
刚
know
刚
the
落幕哈，这
Pyeongchang
也意味着这一
Winter
全球的
Olympics
社
just
会要正
finished.
式的进入北京时间了。
And now
那想
we
请
come
问一下
to
局
the
长，
Beijing
在
time
新
of
的这个奥运周
2022.
期里面，
For the
我们
new
有哪一些阶段性的工作
Winter
要
Olympic
开展？
season,
另
what's
外
our
就是说
job
对于2022年的冬奥
for
会，你有哪
the
一些
General
期
Administration
谢
of
谢。
Sports, and what is your expectation?
好，这是关于奥运会的。
Thank you very much for asking a question regarding the Winter Olympic Games.
我今天呢，
I think that's a lot of people's expectation for the future. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce our
平昌冬奥
preparing
会
work
闭 in
in this
式上
regard.
习近
At
平总书记呢
the closing
向
ceremony of the
全世界
Pyeongchang
发
Winter
出了
Olympics
相聚北京的
Games,
邀请。
the General Secretary Xi
至此呢，
Jinping sent the invitation to the people
冬奥会
around the world, welcome to come to
开始
Beijing
进入
for
北京时期。
2022 Winter Olympics. And that
那么作
also
为
marks the starting
中国
point of the
体育界
season
儿
for Beijing.
接下来的4年，就是要
So for the
努力备战
coming 4 years,
练兵。
all the athletes
那么
should be
在
fully
北
prepared
京冬奥会上，
for the
我
game.
们做出了一个承诺，
And we
就是
also
要
make the commitment
全项目参赛。这
that
全项目
all the
参赛呢
Chinese
就
athletes
是
will
102
participate
项目
all the
中国体
items
育
which
健儿呢
102
进入
Olympic
资格
Games.
取得资格进入
So the
相应的
Chinese athletes should be
比赛
qualified and enter
所以
to
这个任务呢，对
the
我们还
games
是非
in
常
Beijing.
压力大。
This is a
我们
quite
下一步想
a
力
big
争
pressure,
取得好成绩，
and we work
为全国
all
人民交
our
流的
efforts
民意
toward this goal and to let
那
our
么
people
要取
satisfied
得这
with
样
the
的一个
results.
成绩啊，
In order to make
说
this
说
into
但是
reality,
做起
it's
来
not
还是很
just
难的。
do some lip service.
这一次平昌冬
It's
奥
not
会
an easy
呢，
task
大家已经看到，
to
我们成绩
accomplish.
不够理想。
For the Pyeongchang
但是
Olympic
呢，
Games,
我们还是收获了一些。
we also
首先
see
一
the
个
room
呢
for
体
improvement.
现出一批
But
新
we
人
should look at first
另外呢，我
the
们
positive side.
在
We
一
also
些
see the
水上
new
项目
talents,
大家已经看了，我们取得了突破，
and
增
we
强
also
了信
make
心。
breakthroughs
更主要的是，
in
我们
the
在
snow
现场
games.
跟各国交
More
流
importantly,
和
we
运动
also
员
had
的比
very
赛，
good
我们收获了我们
communications
全
with the
项目参
athletes
赛
from
的
the
信心
world,
和决
and
心
we also gained the
中国运动
confidence
员
to
常
participate
新
in
月
all the items in 2022. The
业余
athletes
装备
Changxin
在
Luo
奥运会的比赛场
by
上
utilizing
飞出
the
了
non-professional
87
or the performance
用自己的勇敢劲
clothes and equipment
展现了中国运动员的风
to
貌。
gain the good
他这
results
个
that
在
show the great
现场呢
spirit
试
of
跳
the
的
Chinese athletes.
最高飞行了
The
97
highest
米，这个数据呢是这样的
distance or the
最高
longest
速度
distance
是85
she
每小时
performed
85公里
is 97
飞行时间大概接近4秒。
and reached to as long as 4 seconds. This is
另外，我
a
们还来
tremendous
自
progress
夏季田
in
径
this regard.
项目
And
的
we
几个
also
小
have
伙
the
子
athletes from
他
Summer
们就
Olympic
凭着一
Games.
股没有条件，我要创
They
造条件
transferred to the
练
Winter
这样一种
Olympics
韧劲
by making
愣把
the
这个中国
groundbreaking
雪车给开上了
efforts
奥运会的赛道，
and we also
时
see
速达到
their
了
good
150
performance,
公里。
like us
我要
reached the
说的
150
是奥运冠军呢，
kilometers
无非就是155公里。
and the champions just 155 kilometers.
中国
So our
体育健儿
Chinese athletes
在冬季
performance
项目的任何一
in
个
the
项目，
Pyeongchang
我们
Olympic
都不应该
Games,
自甘落后，
we
自
should
动放弃。
feel honored or
我们一定要
not give up
在
ourselves.
全项目上参赛，为
It's
世界展示
Possible, and we
中国
have the
体
full
育健儿的
confidence
风采。
to showcase
下一步，
our
我
athletes
们一定要以
results in 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games, guided by the Xi Jinping Southern Socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, with the international horizon plus Chinese features as our working benchmark to make our solid progress in this regard, as well as clean, green, open, and inclusive philosophy also guide our work. We will bring the energy of all athletes, all resources to pick the best. We will do everything we can to prepare for 2022 Winter Olympics. With General Secretary Xi Jinping's requirements as well as the support from the State Council and the Party Central Committee, we will for sure to showcase our great results in 2022 Winter Olympics. Not just participating in the games, we also will organize a wonderful games in Beijing. This is also a requirement by the General Secretary Xi Jinping. So we shouldn't make no mistake, because you make one step in the wrong direction, you need to make another 10 steps to correct it. We do not have time to do that. Time is tight. We should work harder. Thank you. And the second question is quite a sharp question from the netizen. These 2 years after you in the office, we made a great progress in reform, but we also have different voices regarding the reforming results. How do you take on that, and what's your next plan to further promote reforms and development? Yes, we do make some reforms and measures in this regard. We're not just for the sake of reform to do that. We see there are a lot of bottlenecks and challenges in sports, especially the performance sports or the competitive sports. So we heard the voice from the society. That is why we lay out and roll out these reforms. Some of the reforms received the welcome by the public. There is, of course, room for improvement in certain measures. We are very open to hear all the voices, and we will make improvement to build a strong country in sports. We should bring sports to every one of the citizens. That's our key aim. We should provide the sports in a way that can be accessed by all sports and be satisfied by all. So only rely on general administration of sports is not enough to achieve the goal. So we should leverage all the resources from the public to achieve the goal, and the general administration of sports will take the driver's seat. By involving the related departments and the personnel in our radar, we also need to formulate some roadmaps and plans. We should be open. The national sports is open to the public, to the society. It's welcomed by all. And also the Sports Commission is also open to the people from other industries. We also invite the experts to participate to establish the whole system, because they are the professionals. They know from A to Z how to run and organize the committees. By doing so, we believe that's conducive to make a sustainability of our committee. We're also open to the people from other industries except sport. From the results, we can tell that there are a lot of people that before cannot be registered, right now is also in our system. We're also open to the clubs, to the organizations, and also to the companies. We would like to leverage all the possible resources to support the national teams And for picking the national team athletes, that should be also a fair, open, and equal process. We will look at their capabilities to choose the best one without the under-table deals. So we should jump out of our circles to organize the events that are happening in the sports sectors. We would like to, based on the report, the efforts of the whole society to build the new drivers of development of sports sector. That is also why we conduct reforms. And thank you very much for giving us the time to do further reform. Thank you.
Next one is the Deputy Director of the CDPF, which is the Disabled Person Federation. Now the floor is open for questions. Is it from the China Youth? We understand that in some of the areas we still have some disabled children. Some of them are suffering of very serious disabled. They are very difficult to get into schools, kindergartens, and some of them, because of the poverty, they miss the opportunity to get treatments in time. So I just want to know the country's policies in helping with those disabled children. Thank you for your interest for disabled children. Disabled is actually inevitable in the course of human being. Sometimes children born of disabled, and sometimes disabled caused by some other reasons, for example, wars, natural disasters, etc. So for disabled people, population, we should show special concern and care. Just mentioned about the education issue for the disabled children. Actually, China has attached great importance to this issue. In China, we have around 1.68 million disabled children between the age of 0 to 6, and 220,000 households of these disabled children live in a very impoverished condition, and we want to give them the opportunity to have the education, and China has made a lot of policies to support them. Since the 18th CPC National Congress, China has made a provision for special education with 2 initiatives. All of these are contributed to helping the disabled children to go back to school. I just mentioned that for these 220,000 households, we have taken a lot of measures to improve the situation for them. As of for now, and we also have a 90% of those disabled children have the opportunity to go back to school. But still, we are still facing some challenges. In the past few years, we are solving these problems by cases. For example, in 2015 and 2016, we have helping around 76,000 and 88,000 disabled children for their education. But still, for the record, we still felt that there were around 240,000 disabled children are not able to go to school. For this group of disabled children, we see 80%, meaning that 80% of them are suffering with a serious disease or disabled, and the other 80%, meaning that 80% of them live in the rural area. So our focus is to solve the issues and problems that are encountered by these disabled children. We want to help them to send them to a regular school for education or send them to a special education school. When necessary, we may also send teachers to help those disabled children or have a remote teaching. However, it's very difficult to implement that initiatives to the rural areas. Here, I really want to encourage more volunteers to participate in the education for the disabled children. And you also mentioned about the recovery issue for these disabled children. China also attached great importance for the treatment and recovery of these disabled children. And these 2 years, China also adopted many policies to help the treatment of the disabled children. And we also launched a targeted recovery plan for disabled children. Going forward, we will continue to investigate on those plans. Nowadays, we are working on the treatment methodology to help those disabled children being recovered. One more question. Now China is working towards a moderately prosperous society. That includes all of the households with disabled children. And what are the challenges that we have? Yes, President Xi emphasized the point that when we are working towards the moderately prosperous society, we will not leave those disabled out of the process. This is of vital importance for our plan. With the requirement of the State Council and the CPC Central Committee, we will make solid efforts in 6 areas. The first one, we will improve the top-level design. Since the 18th Party Congress, we keep improving the top-level design for the disabled. China has also launched a series of policies in the process of building a moderately prosperous society and the poverty alleviation. We have made policies to help address issues of the disabled. And for the 13th five-year plan, we also make specific arrangements for helping disabled to work towards a socialist country. So for all of these efforts are helping the disabled people, especially those disabled people with serious disease, to get better treated and recovered. In the past 5 years, I would say we have many policies that help the disabled to work towards a well-off society. This shows that President Xi and the Party Central Committee has attached great importance to the disabled. And we also see a very concrete plan since the 19th Party Congress. And in the government work report, of this year's two session, we can see in 7 areas we pointed out the issue concerning the disabled. So we should continue to improve relevant policies. And during the course of the efforts to build a moderately prosperous society, we will also ensure that the disabled will not left out. We will also protect the interests and rights of the disabled. This is a key component for rule-based governance. In the past years, Constitution is our fundamental law, and we also have other supporting laws, including disabled-related laws to safeguard their rights and obligations. And we also have a special law for the recovery and the treatment for the disabled. And going forward, we will continue to make efforts to ensure the welfare of the disabled. And the next step we will take is to work on a targeted disabled treatment. We have a big data information tank which records all the information about the disabled. And also we have a 10 indicator for all of those disabled population. For this big data, it can help us to better analyze the issues we are facing, to better help the disabled children. And for this kind of real-name investigation can help us better understand the needs for the disabled population and meet their needs. In the past 5 years, we have helped around 5 million disabled lift them out of the poverty. But still, we have around 2.8 million disabled live under poverty. We have to continue to solve their problems. The first one, we will try to expand the service for their recovery scheme. And the second is to better improve the environment for those disabled. That's what we call a targeted poverty alleviation for the disabled population. And we also need to dig out the energy that's from the disabled population. Because this group of people are very important for China's development. In these past few years, we also see some talents from the disabled population. Some of them win awards from some international contests. And we also see a gold medal for the curling in the disabled Olympics. So we can see the courage, the confidence from this disabled population. I believe with the support of the media, the press, with the efforts of all of us, we want the whole society to pay attention and care for this special group so that they can face the challenge and be integrated into the society and have a better life and independence. Of course, we want to foster a very friendly environment And I understand that in the past few years, the press has made their contribution for the disabled population, and we really want this group to be integrated in our society. And thank you for your press coverage to help building a positive environment for the disabled population. Here, on behalf of over 85 million disabled population, I want to say a big thank you to all of you. And last, I have a requirement. I really want your support. And I always heard a saying during our work. Sometimes people will not understand people doing the work to help the disabled. And they don't even know what is involved. And also, instead of saying being emphasized, we are being ignored. So we want every one of us hold hands together and to build a culturally advanced society and pay more attention to the disabled population. I really hope that in the future, more disabled people will be encouraged by a lot of you. Thank you. And also, I will want to say a big thank you to everyone who work in the area to help the disabled. Now let's welcome the next minister.
Welcome Minister Li Ganjie from Ministry of Ecological Environment, which is also a newly formed ministry. Now the floor is open. Thank you very much from CCTV. Congratulations to be endorsed as the first Minister of Ministry of Ecological Environment. How do you describe your feelings right now? And also, as you mentioned in the press conference, that you have a goal that covers the next 3 years in order to defend the blue of our skies. It's a really hard job to do. What's your secret behind? Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the NPC deputies as the first Minister of newly formed Ministry of Ecological Environment. And thank you for their trust. 2 things to describe my current feelings. Number 1, I feel more weight on my shoulder. The newly established Ministry of Ecological Environment that's combined the original function of Environment Protection Ministry as well as other 6 related departments. So we have a larger scope of works, more jobs to do, and bigger challenges to face. We should commit to our duty and to perform a better job, which is a big challenge. We do not want to let our people down. And we also face some more favorable conditions which enhance our confidence to reach the goal. After the 19th CPC National Congress, the work regarding the environmental protection and ecological conservation is entered to a new progress, and we achieved historic results and seen historic change. Not saying that we not only made good progress in the environmental protection, we also accumulated many effective and successful measures and experience that all laid a solid foundation for our future works. The newly established Ministry of Ecological Environment is also a solution to deal with our deep-seated issues in ecological protection. We have every single reason to believe that under the strong leadership of Party Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, and guided by Xi Jinping's thought of socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, we will make a good job in a faster pace to improve environment and create more eco products in order to face people's ever-growing needs to a better environment and life. Regarding your second question, 2 days ago in the presser, we right now established the plan and decision of the 3-year plan to define the blue of our skies. We also had some introductions regarding the quantitative areas. You also asked the same questions. I believe all of you would like to know more how to really realize the goal. The plan is still underway, not 100% finished yet, but we had our principles regarding 4 areas. Number 1, we should have the focus. So we focus on number 1, that we should find out the key factor, which is PM 2.5, which is also smog. And the second of our focus should be look into the key areas like Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei areas, Yangtze River areas, and other key rivers and basins. And number 3, our efforts should also put to the key industries sectors, including steel, coal-fired power plants, cement, plant glasses, our vehicles, and number 4, we should have our key time phrase, which means that we should focus especially in the fall and winter seasons, because that produce more environmental issues. And next, we should also focus on to improve the structure. We should first look at the industrial structure. We will continue our effort to drive our endeavor to cut the overcapacity and also the low quality factories. We should bring the industries, especially the steel and the coal sectors, to let them meet the ultra-low emission requirement. And number 2, we also emphasize on our requirement and efforts on the energy mix. We will close the coal-fired power plant in smaller size. We also look at boilers that are required and used in this regard, especially the work in the rural areas. And we will also to better leverage the clean and renewable energy usage. And number 3, regarding the structural adjustment and improvement, we should also look at the transportation areas, from the road to rail transportation. For the diesel trucks, we will conduct a special program on controlled emission by diesel trucks. And we will also take over the high emission and old vehicles off the roads. We'll also work on the new energy used vehicles.
这个方面呢，首先是要继续大力的开展造林啊
the farmland usage areas. We'll continue our efforts in the forest areas and to have more areas in green.
露天矿上的开采，因为这方面的严惩
For coal mining areas, that's also require our further energy and concern in this regard.
把秸秆禁烧这项工作要做好，这是第二层意思。
And also we will do our efforts
第三层意
to
思呢，
cut
就是强化支撑，
the straw burning
强化4项支撑。一
behaviors.
个呢是强化
We
执法
will
督查，
strengthen
第
our
二呢是强化
law-based
区域间的
oversight and
联
supervision.
防联控。
We'll also join the
第三个呢
efforts
是
from
强
the
化科技创新
neighbor cities and
因为我们
areas
要治
to
好雾霾，治好
make
大气污染，
and bring the
以整个
synergy
的生态
together.
环境保护。
Because in the end, we want to
技术创
achieve
新
the progress in this regard. Does not need the requirement for the joint efforts from the nearby areas and also need the cutting-edge technologies.
全社会的力量
We also need
都加入进来，
stronger guidance and policies to leverage all the resources
攻坚战。
to
第四层
define
意思
the
呢，
blue of our sky
就是
and
实现
to
目标，
win the decisive
实现
battle.
习近平总书记
And
在中央经济工作会议上
at the
关于南京
Central
会战
Economic and
提出的
Financial
4个
Working
明显的目
Meeting,
标
General Secretary
也就是
Xi Jinping also mentioned
要
4
使
goals in these areas.
PM2.5 的浓度
We should lower
明显下降，
PM 2.5
重污染
density
的天数
decline
明
remarkably,
显减少，
and the days with
大气环
severe
境质量
smog should
明显
also
改
see
善
a continuous decline.
人民群
The
众
sky
的
should be bluer
蓝天幸福感
and let the
明
people
显增强，
feel
大致就是这
happier
么一个思路。
with
以
the
后呢
blue sky.
会
That's
详
our
细
key
内容
guidance.
我们再及时向大家
I
报告
will
谢谢。
introduce
好，继续
more
提问。
in due time. Thank you.
谢谢部长您好，我是中国日报社的记者。
Thank you, Minister.
我们想问的是，我们发现去年冬
Our
天
question
有一些
regarding
地方出现了这个天然气供应紧张的这个
that
情
the
况，有
a
人说这是
short
不是
supply
煤气
of
造成的
natural
不
gas.
知道您对这个
Some
说法
people
怎么
like
看？
confuse that this is maybe the issue, like we change from the coal to
关于
natural
去
gas.
年冬天的天然气供应的问题啊，
Regarding this question for
煤
last
气化的
year,
问题啊，方方面面都很关注。
we have paid attention
这个
to
问题呢，
this
实际
issue.
上在3月6日的新闻发布会上，
On March the 6th,
发改委的何立峰主任
actually,
也是
Mr.
现在的
He
全国
Lifeng,
政协的何
the,
立峰副主席啊，
the Minister of the NDRC, actually
就
addressed this issue on his
相关的
presser
原因
on March the 6th.
以及下一步要改进加强的
He
举措，
explains the reasons and some of the next steps.
很全面的、很深入的
It's a comprehensive explanation for
对
this
核准的这
issue.
个解读啊，我是完全赞成。
I totally agree
我以为
with
是非常客观
Mr.
的。
Minister He's
那么今天呢，针对您的提
analysis.
问啊，我想
For your
补充啊
question today,
介绍3点情况和认识。
I want to give you more
第一个呢
details about it.
煤改气、煤改电，我们叫双带啊，应该说在
First of all, we are talking about changing the
PM2.5
coal
改
to
善大气环
gas
境
or
质量方
changing the
面
coal to electricity.
作用是很大，贡献是很大。
I think
我们
this
讲这
will
个煤
help
改气、
to
煤改电呢，
reduce the PM
指的
2.5.
是农村的
When I'm saying this like
家里
transformation
燃烧的
of
那些
the
煤的
energy,
煤改气、
I
煤改电，
specifically referring
不是
to
指所有
the
的煤。
rural area.
这个首先
I'm
要
not
澄
referring
清
to the coal
不是讲的那些工业用煤
resources or energy
其他方面呢，就是讲
in
农村
anywhere.
家里
I'm
烧
just specifically referring to the coal that was burned in the rural areas, in the rural
它的
households.
污染说实在的是比较重的。
Because we see a very heavy pollution for the
1吨
coals from those
散
rural
煤
areas.
相当于15吨以上的电煤，它的排放量。
For 1 ton of
1
coal,
吨散煤相当于15吨
this
电煤。
emission actually equals to 15 tons of what we call the electric coal.
大致啊有那么5、6千万吨，
For Beijing and Hebei area, we have around like 5,000 to 6,000 tons of coals, which accounts for a big percentage of the pollution. So if we can solve this problem, it will help dramatically to reduce the PM 2.5. Since the winter and the autumn last year, we actually organized a team to further investigate into this issue. We analyzed the emission of the coal, and we do see that the renewable energy can be much beneficial to us. If we can change coal to use gas or to use electricity, it can help largely reduce the PM 2.5. That is the first point I want to make. If we can change the use of coal, it can help us to improve the air quality. And we also see some notable progress for this change. And the second point I want to make, last year, between December the 15th to December the 20th, at that time the Ministry of Environmental Protection, we have organized around 839 groups to visit more than 2,590 areas and over 25,000 villages to have a all-rounded investigation and survey. Because of the change, we do see some problems from the rural areas. In order to solve the problem, we don't want the rural citizens to suffer in winter. That's why we have this kind of survey to better understand their situation. Among these 5.3 million villages, we found over 4 million households has realized the change from coal to gas or electricity. For the 4.7 million households, we found they are encountered with some problems of the heating supply. And we also see these problems in another 250 villages have this heating supply issue. And we are working with the gas stations and the local government to tackle the issue. So the percentage is that like 250 villages out of 25,000 villages have this kind of problem. And we also receive some feedback from telephones and the WeChat messages. If we found some of the villages have these kind of issues, we will go on site to look into the issue. And we do receive like 70 issues from these public platforms. And we did tackle the problems for those 70 villages. From our department, we should try to solve the problem. At the same time, we can help the villagers to improve their lives. We should put these key issues as a priority. This is the second point I want to make. The third one is that we want to have a clean energy in order to supply heating in the northern area. We need to continue our efforts in this regard. For natural gas, it is very precious energy for us. And it will play a different role. Currently, we want to use the natural gas to change the way of heat supply. This will also drive the heat supply using the clean energy, which will be contributed to the environmental protection. And we do see that the villagers, the residents, they also want natural gas to be used in their daily life. It is easier for them to make their living with the natural gas. It's much safe and clean. If you want to pay a visit to those villages who have been using the clean energy, you will find that they found their living standard being improved by using the natural gas and clean energy. Of course, during this process, they may encounter some problems, but we think these problems can be tackled. Every year, we have been increasing the volume of the natural gas supply. And when we're talking about this percentage, we do see that the supply of the natural gas is sufficient to support the clean energy. If we strictly follow the policy that was mentioned by the Minister He Lifeng, we will see that we can make great endeavor for the clean energy. And for our department, we will continue to implement the policy by the central government. By taking this opportunity, I will also want to thank all the press, all the media for your long-term support to the ecological environment protection. Thank you so much.
Now let's welcome the next minister. Minister Wang Menghui from Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Construction. Thank you, Minister Wang. Now the floor is open. We choose one journalist from Hainan province. Thank you. From 2016 October, the local government issued very strict policies in this regard to cool down the real estate market. What's your take on the current situation in China's real estate market, and what's our next step in this regard? I would like to start by expressing my gratitude to the journalists for your long-term support and understanding. Started from last year, we formally implement the decision and plan made by the Party Central Committee and make the joint efforts with related departments, as well as the great support from the local governments. We made differentiated regulations and policies to roll out in different cities, we can say that the real estate market enjoys a stable development. We can say that number one, the housing price is curbed in terms of the fast-growing increase. And we also see the very positive and encouraging change in the real estate market. Our next step is to fully implement the spirit of 19th CPC Central National Congress and to be clear that houses is to live in, not for speculation. We will continue our efforts in this regard to continue the efforts in this regard and also establish the long-term mechanism. Let me show you more details. Number one, we'll stay committed to our goals of reform, continue our efforts, and make sure all we are doing is in a consistent way. We'll let the local government to fulfill their primary responsibilities in this regard. Second, we will step up the system in multi-levels systems and involve multi-stakeholders. We will emphasize our work in the house rental market. We will also continue our efforts in the public rental areas, and we also put our energies to bring people's needs and the actual demand in a reasonable way of development in different cities. We will also continue our work in the rundown areas and in hospitable areas. We will continue to give care to the migrant workers as well as houseless first-time workers, including the teachers. To bring them into our radar, to bring the house's benefit to them. We will also continue to improve our structural design. And number four, we will do a better job in the market monitoring early warning system as well as statistic works, so we can conduct or more precise efforts. And we will, of course, strengthen our supervision and oversight in real estate market. We will punish heavily to the enterprises and real estate agencies who break the rules. Make sure the real estate market develop in a healthy way. Thank you.
然后我想问一个棚户改造的问题，因为之前政府工作报告里面明确要启动新的3年棚改攻坚计划，然后今年也说是要开工580万套。然后我们想请问住建部今年将采取哪些措施来确保完成这些目标？然后呢，这项目标的完成过程中有没有什么困难需要解决？
And during the whole process, what are the challenges? Thank you. For rundown urban areas, after the 18th CPC National Congress, with the strong leadership of Party Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, we earnestly implemented the decisions and the plans made by the Party Central Committee. And we can say that we achieved a good result in urban rundown areas renovation. We bring around 60,000 households from the rundown areas to the nice built houses. Their living conditions much improved. In this year's work report, we will start a new round of the 3-year renovation plan, which will covering the 5 million new houses. So we will continue our work to implement the plans and decisions made by the Party Central Committee and the State Council. We will first make sure that the 5 million house should be completed. We right now also call on the local governments to put this as their priorities to make the goal into reality. And our second job is to improve the health things we provide to the people that's moved from the rundown area. That's also the question concerned by the public. We will also center our energy in improving the quality of construction as well as the safety. We will continue to bring more services to match people's needs. And number 4, we will do a better job to control the costs, to make the financials play a better role in a smart way. And we will continue to commercialize the rundown areas. And we will strengthen our efforts in supervision and oversight, make sure we can review and track the work we have done and make sure the goal can be realized. Thank you.
Let's welcome the next minister. This is the auditor-general of the National Audit Office of People's Republic of China. Good morning, everyone. It was my great pleasure to meet you all and take your questions.
谢谢主持人，我是广东广播电视台的
This
记
is
者。
from my
我们注意到，
Guangdong
审计权
broadcast.
覆盖成为了一个高频词，被反复的
We
提
always
及。
talk
所以我
about
想
a
问审计
all-rounded
长，审
audit.
计在未来几年里，审计工
So
作将
I
如何
want to
扎
ask
实的
what
推
is
进
your
全覆盖？审计是否成
deployment
为
for
反
the
腐和提高政府绩
all-rounded
效的又一个
audit
重要武器？谢谢。
in the next 5
党
years.
中央要求对
Per
公共资
the
金、
plan
国有
of
资
the
产、国有
CPC
资
Central
源
Committee
以及
for any state-owned
领导干部
assets,
履行经济责任情况，实行审计全覆盖。
the audit
这
should
对
cover
于
all
推
aspects.
进国家治理体系和治理能力的
This
现
will
代
help
化，
to improve the
建设
governance
中
of the
国特色
country
社会主义意义重大。
and build a
各
socialist
级审计
country.
机关
For different
要
levels
按照
of the
党中央、
audit
国务院的要求
entities should follow
积
the
极推进
instruction of the
审计
State
全覆盖。
Council and
第一，要
roll
坚
out
持
this
党的集中统一
all-rounded
领导，
audit.
优化审计监督职责。
At the same time, we'll optimize the
审计
duties for the
是党
audit.
和国家监督体系中的重要组成部
Audit
分。
is a key
审计全覆盖
component of the duties
既涉及
for the Central
行政
Committee
机关，
of the party and
也
the
涉
State
及
Council.
党的机关、
So for the
既
audit,
涉
it
及
conducted
公共
at
资金、
different
国
levels,
有资源，
not only for the party
也涉及
entities, but also
领导干
all
部
aspects
履行
of
经
the
济责任的情况。
society.
因此，
And the
要
audit is
坚持
also
党的
closely
全面领
related
导，
for the officials
依法独立行
to
使审计
supervise
监督权，
their duties.
优化审计职责，
So we should
构
continue
建统一
to optimize
高效的
the responsibility
审计监督
for
体
the
系。
audit in order to
第二，
build a
要积极
high
推进
level
大数据审计，
audit.
坚持科技强
And
省
audit should be based
通
on
过信
big
息化、
data.
数字化，努力提高
We would like
审
to
计监
use
督
the
的质量
information technology to improve the quality and efficiency of the audit.
两级部署、以用为本的要求，
We will have
积极
a
拓展
unified
大数据
guidance
技术的运用，
and make use of the
推
big
广
data
数字化审计模式，
and promote a digital
要
audit
加强
measure.
对审计监督对象的
Third, we will also provide more guidance and supervision on internal audits for entities at different levels of the country. By doing this, we can better prevent the risks and strive for a high-quality development and also help to crack down the corruption. Thank you. Next question.
谢谢主持人，沈记者你好，我是财新周刊财新晚
Thank
记者。
you. This is from
我的问题是，19大报告提出，未
My
来3
question
年是
is
全面
that-
建成小康社会的决胜期，要
So
坚决打
the
好
19th
防
CPC
范化解
National
重大风
Congress
险，精准扶贫，
emphasized that
污染防
we
治
have
攻
three
坚战。
critical
我想请问
battles to
您，
fight
围绕打
in
好
the
这3场
upcoming
攻坚战
3
审
years.
计机关将有哪些
So I want to
行动
ask your
来坚持4机
contribution
构改革
to
审
the
计署
three
新增加了
critical
重大
battles.
项目稽查的重大职能。我想问
And
一
I
下，您新
understand
增加的这项
that
职
there
能
were some new
对
duties
打好
added
这
to the
3
National
大攻
Audit
坚战
Office.
有什么好
So
处？
what are
谢
the
谢。
new duties can help to win over the three critical battles? Conquering the three battles play a key role in building a moderately prosperous society and strive for the success for socialism of Chinese characteristics for a new era. We should follow the guidance of the Party Central Committee and the State Council and play a positive role in fighting against the three critical battles. First of all, we should play our role in forestalling and diffusing risks. We should react quickly and cover a broad range of areas. And we also need to pay more attention to some financial risks and pay close attention to the debts of local government. And we also need to pay close attention to the potential risks in the property areas and the capital assets. In order to promote the forestalling and diffusing risks, we will send out alerts for the risks. Second of all, we will help for improve the targeted poverty alleviation. We will have a better organize of the audits and also have an audit conducted to the impoverished area. And we will also cover all the rural and impoverished areas for the audit and pay close attention to all the projects that help to alleviate the poverty. For any illegal use or abuse of the poverty foundations, we will be punish those entities. And also we will set a very effective accountability system. Third, we will help to fight against the pollution. Last September, there is a document which emphasized the importance of the audits for any natural resources. We have to pay enough attention to the measures for the audit. Also to encourage our government to build a clean government.
本来想让您答2个问题，但是呢，有一个记者反复说啊，这个您在对外检查过程中一直关注您采访您，然后他想再提问一个问题，希望1分钟简单回答。
Maybe you can use 1 minute to address that question.
谢谢主持人，沈局长您好，我是瞭望周刊的记者。
This is from Liao Wang Daily.
In the past
2 years, we understand that there is an all-rounded audit across China. And we're also talking about the oversight right for the audit. I want to know if there are any risks, challenges for this audit. under the leadership of the Party Central Committee, audit is a very effective method to regulate the country. We will continue to roll out a all-rounded audit and connect this to the government and the society.
感谢陈局长。
Thank you.
好，我们有请下一位部长。
Now let's welcome the next minister.
科技部王志刚部长得到台前。
Mr. Wang Zhigang from Ministry of Science and Technology.
今天的最后一位部长，也是我
And
们
he will be the
履
last
职时间
for today's
最短
Minister
到
corridor.
这儿来接受采访的部长，
And he's
大概只有
also
不到
newly
2个小时。
endorsed
好，下面大家开始提问。
Minister just announced 2 hours ago.
王部长你好，我是光明日报记者。首先刚
From
恭喜
Guangming
您当选
News.
那个科技部
First
部
of
长
all, congratulations
然后想请你谈谈作为新
to
当
be
选
the
的部
Minister
长
of
然后你的
Ministry of
感
Science
受
and
再一个
Technology.
呢，就是关于
How
创
you
新
are
性国
feeling
家建
now?
设的。党的19大那个提出要加快建设
And
创新性国家。
We
今年
mentioned
的
that we
政
should
府工作
speed
报告
up
提出了
in
一
the
些部署
innovation-driven
想问一下，
development,
这个科技部
especially
对如
after
何
the
加快创
19th
新性国家的建设有什
CPC
么
National
布
Congress.
局和考虑？谢
What's
谢。
our plan
好，谢谢
to
你
implement
对
the
科
goal?
技工作的关心。
Thank you
对
very
科
much
技部重新
for
组建的关心。
everyone's long-term
首先，
efforts
作为新当选的科
to
技部长，
support our work in
现在
Ministry
脑
of
子里想
Science
的
and
还是
Technology. As newly
怎么样
endorsed
把科技工
minister,
作
all I'm
在国
thinking
家
now
经济社会发展的大局中间
is
把它
that
做好。
under the
真正在新时
overarching
代
plans made
支
by
撑我
the
们
central government,
国家强势
how
的
our
一个
ministry
作用。
can play a
那么我现在
conducive
更
role
多的想就
to
是
reach
科
the goal.
技在当今时代
Technology
对经济社会发展、对民生改善、对国家安全、
is
对人民生活越来越重要。
more and more
过去我们科
important
技是在小众
to
的
the
范围内，
country's
更多在大学、
economic,
科研院
social
所。
development, as well as
那么
people's
接
better
接
life.
着呢，不断地
Before
拓展到大
only
众
focus
经济
our
与
efforts
科技的
in
结合。
the
现在按照
like
媒体的要求，
universities
不单是要
or
与经济结合，
laboratories.
还
Right
有
now, it
与
requires us not to only
政治、
focus
社会、
on
民
the
生、
academic
生
areas.
态
We
等
should
等
also
方面
focus
都要
on
结合好。
environmental
所以对科技
protection,
工作来
focus
讲
on
呢，
how
是一个
innovation
很大的
can
挑
play a
战。
better role
同时呢，
to
也赋
promote
予
the
科技
economic
工
and
作
social
更
development.
大的空
We
间。
should also
所以，作为新当选的科
expand
技部长啊，
the role
应该说现在想的就是怎么样
of our
能够
work.
发挥科技第一
So
生
as
产
the
力，
minister,
支撑
how
引
we
领发
can
展的
let
第一动力
the
的作用，
innovation become
使中国的科技
the first
对
driver
中国现代化的发展做出新
to
的更大的贡献。
make a new
这就是我的感
contribution
受。
to China's
关于
development.
创新国家，
That's my current feeling and thinking.
党的十九大对创新国家在
The 19th
目标任务、战略方
CBC
针、
National Congress
重大原则方面做
lay out the
政府工作报
principle,
告，
direction,
在创新国
and
家的
plan
部署安排
for our
方面
work.
也都做了
And
具体
we
的安排。
also have the detailed plan in this regard,
也就是说，我们现在
which
要分
means
3步走，
right now we
真正
should
的2020年
focus on 3 steps.
能够
By
全面
2020,
实现小康
in order
2035
to
年基本实
fully
现现代化，2050
realize the
要成为现代
our
化强国。
goals. Especially by
其中应有之义。
2050, we should
也就
be
是说
a
科技
socially modern country.
在进入现代化，
So the
成为
innovation
科
or
技强国的征
technology
程上，将会可发挥更大的作
should
用。
play
这是
a
一个规
greater
律，
role
也是科
to
技
make China
为
as
什么
a
被大
strong
家
power
重视的一
in
个重要
technology
原
and
因。
innovation.
我
That
们
is
说
why a lot of
我们想
focus
科技要什么啊？
was
我们的
put
工作要讲究规律
have
性
been put
真
in
正
this
的规律
area.
就
We
是
should
科技的规
find
律
the
性
pattern
是其中最关键的一个要素。
how innovation
另
and
外第二
technology
个
develop.
我们讲科技是第一生产力，
We talk
创
about
新是支撑引
innovation
领发展的第一动力。
should be
那
the
这第一
key
动力
driver.
向谁要？
So
关键因
who
素
we
之一
should ask
也
for
是向科技要。
the driver.
所以
Technology
我们
will
讲
bring
建设
it
创新国家，
to us.
实际上就是为
We talk about
我们成为
innovation
现代化强国
driven
来做
country
支撑
to。be a strong power
当然，
in
建设创新国
technology.
家，我们从工作上考虑的话，首先要
Our
有一个
work should
大局的站位，也就是说，
stand
怎么
at
样
the
把创新国家
overarching
建设
and a
与
greater
整个现代化
picture
强国和5位一体
stand.
4个全面
We should think
和
about
高
from
质
the
量发展
5-sphere integrated plan, a 4-pronged
我们
comprehensive
国家
strategy,
强盛、人民
as
幸
well as
福
should
怎
develop
么样
in
能
a
够更
high
紧密的结
quality
合？当
perspective.
然还有一
We
点，
should bring all this
中国的科
together
技
to guide
如何
our
为
work.
世界
It's-
科技
we
做
also
出中国
should
的
think
贡献？
about
how China can play a greater role and contribution to the global innovation and technology development. We should also center our energy to establish the mechanism and the system in this regard. It's facing on the overarching goal and the plans. and also center the stage, how we can strengthen our design at the top level, and how we make our system be more sound, robust, and efficient, which require that universities, societies, enterprises should play a better role, and they play their own roles, and they should also create the synergy under the construction of our system. And we should be very clear where we want to go, what is the path to reach our goal. That's all under our consideration. As General Secretary Xi Jinping mentioned, we should strengthen our work to face on the cutting edge or the front line of our innovation. We should meet the main field to further drive the economic and social development, as well as to better meet people's requirements. So all our work should uphold the requirement made by the General Secretary Xi Jinping, and also can support the country's goals and plans, and we will make the China's contribution to the global stage in terms of cutting-edge technology utilization. Moreover, we should create an enabling environment to involve and embrace the talents to play their role. So we should think about from the legal perspective, from the policy, from the cultural construction, and how we can create an environment to respect the scientific practitioners and how to let the talents to make their contributions to the innovation-driven development. For us, we have a lot of work to do. So technology innovation, in the end, is innovation in people. How we can let the personnel to play their roles and strengths. How we can establish the industrial system. How we can provide our service to fully support them. How the legislation work can support the people willing to do their job in China, to make their contribution in innovation development, to let the people consider that China is the fertile ground for innovation. That's our work to do in the future.
谢谢主持人。王部长您好，我是科技日报融媒体记者。我想问您，当前我国正处在由科技大国迈向科技强国的新征程，创新驱动发展，改革驱动创新成为共识，也就是大家所说的双轮驱动。
We're talking about the two engines for the innovation. So under such context, what are the next steps for the innovation for the science and technology? Thank you. Thank you for your question. You're talking about the innovation-driven development. So we need reform to help to drive the innovation. That's why we need two engines. Under such a context, we need to understand the trajectory of the global development. For China, we should have our own characteristics. When entering into the new era, we also have to consider the new features of our development. At this point, we need to find a correct path to follow for the innovation. And I just talked about, when we talk about innovation-driven, it's actually talent-driven. It is people-centered innovation. We want the policy to encourage our people to do the scientific work. We may award some material or spiritual awards for these talents. From the resource allocation perspective, I cited some of the instructions from the General Secretary Xi. We think we have to better allocate our resources to serve our scientists. We talk about our legislative environment and the policy environment. We also have to consider about the market to see if our government and the market can help drive the development of the science and technology. This is the next step for our reform. And we also need to pay more attention to the commercialization of science and technology, and also the innovation of the science and technology. At the same time, we should encourage more people to participate in the innovation of the science and technology. All of these needs reforms. Thank you.
感谢王部长。因为王部长刚刚当选2个小时左右。
Minister Wang just been the minister for 2 hours, and he just took the oath of allegiance. And he directly came here to attend this minister corridor. And that's the end of the question section. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your long-term support for the work of science and technology. I hope in the future you continue to pay attention to our development and also open and welcome your feedback so we can better improve our work and make science and technology as a priority and drive the economic growth and national development. Thank you.
All right, that was the last Ministers' Corridor at the Great Hall of the People, and together 7 ministers and directors in charge of states post, the sports industry, ecological environment, housing and real estate market, Disabled People's Federation, National Audit Office, as well as the science and technology sector met the press for the very first time. They answered 14 questions, and this is, of course, after a major round of institutional reforms happening at the government. Together with other ministers and state council members, they will form the new cabinet under the leadership of Premier Li Keqiang. So let me bring in our current affair commentator Victor Gao and Einar Tangen. So we don't get to see this a lot because it's not customary for these high-level officials to answer questions from the journalists, let alone being broadcasted alive in front of the camera. Overall impression, what do you think? How did they do?
I think this is very impressive and this is highly needed. This helps make greater transparency for the Chinese government. It makes it possible for the people in China as a whole to really watch and listen to these newly appointed ministers, and they handle the questions very well. And going forward, I hope they will become household names in China. All of us will know them as a person, as a leader, as great ministers.
I see it as a lot of questions being raised really revolve people's livelihood. The problems that we face matters to all of us, like poverty alleviation, air pollution, housing market, and even express delivery. Did they successfully address the concerns from the journalists?
I mean, they were sincere, and I think I'm going to say that symbolically it's much more important because these are the nation's citizens. Now, these are not politicians. I mean, this is going to be really baffling to people in Europe and the United States who are used to, people getting up there and making a big show and things like that. These are dedicated public servants, and they came across as entirely sincere. They know their areas, and they were trying to relate the questions to the policies. And that's the value of this. I don't know that there was a lot of new information that was necessarily garnered, but symbolically and letting people know that these people are accountable, just like taking the oath, I think this is very important.
New information, have you found some new information from what's being said? We just see some new ministers, including the newly established ministries of ecological environment. What did you think? What's been said?
Well, what impressed me is the newly appointed Minister of Science and Technology. He just finished his swearing ceremony and came directly from upstairs down to the Great Hall to answer directly questions from the press. And this is very, very impressive. The moderator introduced him as the newest minister ever to come directly from the swearing ceremony down to the hall to meet with the nation, meet with the press. And I think and he said that, he needed all the support in getting up to the job and making sure that the Ministry of Science and Technology would really do the right job as part of the overall effort of the economic development of China. And I think he demonstrated all the sincerity and commitment to his job. I look forward to him satisfying all the expectations from the nation.
I like the minister from the Disabled Persons Federation. He seemed incredibly sincere about trying to bring along the 80 million people here in China who are disabled and trying to make positive change for them. And he was very detailed in terms of talking about educational programs and doing everything that's necessary, including site visits. Not only do they come to us, but we will go to them.
Great. Let's leave it there. Thank you very much for your perspectives and insights throughout this morning. Victor Gao and Einar Tangen,
thank you for having us.
And that'll do it for this special coverage of the two sessions. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.